Parkians. We do have a couple announcements this morning. And before I forget, Pat Wigglemeyer asked me to remind everybody the baby band comes on the 7th, which is Tuesday at 7 o'clock. I have about 10 tickets. I can get more. And Pat, she says if you don't have a ticket, you can pick them up at the office. Or if Sandy might have to get some from her week. But there are about 10 of the tickets. These are free. But the Navy band was wonderful. I imagine there will be tickets of more, but and it's at the center at 7. Right now, like I do. Our March book sale will be 29th, 30th, 31st, and for April 1st. April Fool's Day. That's what it is. So I think it starts on Wednesday instead of Thursday. Just people one time. And then our murder mystery is April 15th, which is the Saturday after National Library Week. And the tickets will be $25. They'll start being on sale next Monday and upstairs. And you can take a check, cash, credit card, if you want. Okay. And then our National Library Week is the second week in April, so we won't have a book on the first Wednesday. We'll have it on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the second week. We're going to have Roxy Yonkey talk to us about Kansas Guided Your Wonderful Obscure Thing, a book that she wrote. And then everyone really loves Sarah Schrader from TCC Library. And then I have the historian performer Bill Nick. She's presenting Dr. James Naismith, the inventor of basketball. And so that ought to be fun. How we invented basketball, and somebody was young invented it, but they never won a championship. Well, maybe you're better inventing than you are. So we're going to find out all about that. That'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the other Thursday will be on Saturday. And if you know someone who needs to learn English, they don't have to be Spanish people. They can speak any language. You have those workbooks that they work with, and they're just learning English. And so that's at 6:30 in the evening every Thursday night, and it's a free program. And we have to speak. But I know people in this area that are from Ukraine, you know, or other places that are also Filipinos who learn English. Okay. I know some people that show up to learn Spanish while others are learning English. Okay. But it's really beautiful. About 14 people going right now. We still have story time going on, so if you have little ones that are visiting, bring them to the story time Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, or family night on Tuesday night. Last thing is going on where, you know, if you know somebody, you have a grandchild or one that's coming in the future, you can go out, sit, and you can bring your grandchild and sing to it, and clap to it, and rhymes, and all kinds of little learning things, and the caregiver, parents, grandparents, just really important. So think about that as you have a little one to consider that way. If you can sit. The same. Remember us on Facebook. Also remember we have digital something and now if I wanted to also welcome Linda and Virgil Jones. Linda used to help our poetry, and so she's beloved here. And then Virgil was on our board for about 8 years. And if you know of other people that are, you know, coming back into the area, and so without further ado, let me have Donna come. We're going to set her up on sound and on her PowerPoint.
sound. Hey, oh, I think you hear me now. I'm not to use my speaker voice. I want to come over. Okay. Thanks for coming. It's nice to see everybody on a nice early spring day. I don't know about you guys, but once that calendar flips into March, I'm in spring mode, whether it's weather like yesterday or weather like we're going to have tomorrow. So anyway, my main objective today is to review Lessons in Chemistry by Donna. We like the books. And when I was doing some research, I found this blurb on a New York Times review, and I thought it was very creatively written. So meet Elizabeth Zott. She's the main character of the novel. Scientist by training, cooking show host by default. One meal at a time, she galvanizes her audience to question the lives they've been served. So notice how they use both cooking terms and scientific terms to write that blurb. Very creative. Elizabeth Zott is the main character in a book that's set in the late 1950s, early 1960s in Southern California. She's a beautiful woman who is brilliant, and she is a chemist. She has a presence about her, but life is not easy for her, because she is trying to live in man's world. So as we navigate through this review, I'm going to play Wordle. How many of you have played Wordle? Okay, good. Some of you, and those of you who haven't, we're going to get to learn how to play a new word game. Okay, so Wordle is a word game that's been online for a year, year and a half, maybe two. They release one puzzle per day, and I do mine first thing in the morning. I don't even get out of bed before I do the Wordle. I pull my phone over and I open the Wordle and I do my first thing for the day. Okay, so the way that you play it is you have 6 attempts here to guess a 5-letter word. Okay, and if you don't guess it by the time you got to the bottom of the 6th time, the game tells you the word, and then you're done playing for the day. Okay, and so your challenge is to win every time. Okay, so when you put your letters in, you can see the letters down here at the bottom. When you put your letters in for the word, and it has to be a real word. It can't be just random letters. When you put the letters in, if they turn green, that means the letter is in the correct spot in the word. If it's yellow, it means the letter is in the word, it's just in a different spot. And if it remains black or gray, then it means that letter is not in the word. And you can keep track. You'll see when we do this, you'll see on the bottom, you keep track of what letters you used and which letters you still have, okay? Now, most people will choose their first word to be a word that has lots of vowels in it, because that helps you decipher what the word is. So what I've done is I divided my review into 5 sections, and I created 5 Wordles. And so we're going to play 5 Wordles, and then I'll tell you how that word relates to the story, and we'll go through it that way, okay? So, since I'm the starter, I'm going to give our first word. And one of my favorite words is Ouija. And I'll hit enter. Okay, so we know that the U is in there somewhere. It's not in the second place. Okay, so did someone throw out a word that has 5 letters that has a U in it? And don't get too hung up on not using some of those other letters. Sometimes I still use some of those other letters to find letters that are blunt. Say that again. Blunt. Blunt. Okay. So now we know that it has a B, a U, and it ends in a T. Okay. About. Oh, okay. That's okay. Oh, now we know the UT ends in UT. Big shout. Shout. No, you gotta have a B on you. Gotta have a B. That's okay. Okay. Debut. The B is it. I think she's very good. Very good. So Debut, I chose because this is Bonnie Carnes's first novel she had published, so it was her debut novel. She did have 2 previous novels that she wrote. Her first novel, she didn't even submit it for publication, and Elizabeth Sott is a minor character in that novel. Then her second novel, she did submit her publication, but after about 100 rejections, she decided it wasn't going to be published, so she pulled it. And then she published Lessons in Chemistry last year in 2022. It was the Barnes & Noble Book of the Year. It's also been picked up to be by Apple TV Plus to be a TV series starring Brie Larson, who is the Oscar award-winning Oscar from Room. She was the winner for Room, and she's also that cute little woman that drives all those Nissan cars around in those Nissan commercials right now. That's Brie Larson, okay? Instant bestseller. And so she had instant success, but 2022 was the year that she turned 65 years old. So you guys are overall. Her life's dream at 65. So one reason why she went back is she decided that Elizabeth Stott needed to be heard. Elizabeth Stott stayed in her brain as a character from her first book. And she began to gain depth and to be fleshed out. And finally, she thought, I have to write a book that features Elizabeth Stott. And she did take some of her real life work experiences and fed them into this book. However, she did not pattern Elizabeth Stott after herself. According to Donna, she is very temperamental, quick-tempered, and gets very impatient with people. Well, that's not Elizabeth Stott. Elizabeth Stott is calm. I would say stoic. She doesn't react emotionally to things that happen to her. There is one time in the book where she totally loses it, which for reasons she does. But she stays very calm. She doesn't react emotionally. And that actually leads to a lot of humor in the book. This is really a funny book. It has depth also, but it has a lot of humor. And the humor comes a lot of times from people who are trying to push her down. She is a woman who's trying to survive in a man's world. And so they'll try to do things to her to make her mad, get her to react emotionally, but she refuses to. And so some of their reactions to her non-reactions are the basis of a lot of humor. Okay? So, all right, so let's go on to our next. Okay, does anyone have a starting word they like to use? So it's a plain word before? I used Ouija last time.
L-E-A-S-T.
Say it again.
Beast. L-E-A-S-T.
Okay, so we have an E in there. Another word?
Fable.
Say it again. Fable.
No.
Fable, no.
Fable.
Fable. Fable.
No, there's no bell.
Okay. Okay, no. Sometimes it helps to look at the letters that haven't been used. Oh, we got another letter, R.
But the R is not that spot.
Right, R is not that spot. Prove. Say it again. Prove. Prove.
No R.
Oh, we got a lot of the letters. They're not in the right place, but we know we have an R, an O, a B, and an E.
Cover. C-O-V-E-R.
Let's talk about this cover. Looking at this cover, the color of it, the pinky orange hue, the almost cartoonish drawing of the woman on the front might lead one to think that this is a light beach read, for example. And so the cover is very misleading because while this is a very entertaining book, Elizabeth faces a lot of angst in her life, a lot of situations that she has to learn to navigate in her life. And so it has much more depth than this cover would lead you to believe. And when Donna saw this cover, she said to her publisher, "Don't like that cover." And he said, "Why not?" She said, "Well, first of all, Elizabeth Scott would never look coy and flirtatious. That's just not her personality. And she looks like that in this." She said, "I don't like the cartoony, I don't like the color. The only thing she liked was this pencil that's sticking out of her hair." Because in the book, she always has a pencil in her hair. Reminds me of my good friend Linda Jones. When I was teaching her, Linda always. So that was the only thing that she liked. But she decided that she would defer to her publisher's expertise, and she said, "I'll go with that cover," and that would be okay. She does say, though, that the paperback will have a different cover, and I'm anxious to see what that's going to be. I did find some covers from other countries that I thought you guys would be interested in seeing. The one, of course, on the top, your top left, is the American one. Then the one on the top right is the Great Britain. The one on the bottom right is from Estonia. And then the bottom left is Germany. I don't know if any of those are better covers, if they're more representative of the novel itself. All three of them on the side and the top, on the left, are more cartoonish looking. The one in Germany is a little more serious looking, but I don't know that it really shows that much about it. At least if you see this cover up close, you can see that there are chemistry symbols reflected in her classes. So that does at least give you an idea of that. But there have been people who picked up this book expecting it to be a light beach read and have been a little bit surprised to read it. Most of them still liked it, but they were surprised because of that. Let's go to our next word. Okay, someone else have a good starting word.
I've kind of given up on the foul thing from the starting word, and I like to do something about what's happening now or just happened.
Okay.
So I had lasagna with
Italy.
this guy.
Yeah.
Not found in the dictionary.
I'm always trying something that's a problem name.
So Italy, one word, okay.
Fines,
Say that,
fines,
spell
F-I-N-E-S.
it. Fine, okay. Okay, it has E. Not the right spot, it has E. Great, perfect. Say that again. Great. 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 Okay, so we got some more letters, R and E are in there, and A is in the right spot. A is in the right spot. Ready. Ready? Ooh.
Yeah.
Good job, guys. Okay. So obviously, as a chemist, she deals with reactions. Her field of study in the world of chemistry is the biogenesis, which is the evolution of life forms using inanimate substances. So she deals with a lot of reactions. At the time, in the early 1960s, she would have been a leading pioneer in this field. It was not a well-known, widespread field yet, and so she is kind of an expert in it. Unfortunately, she also has to deal with the reactions from the people in her life who don't think she knows what she's doing because she's a female chemist in a man's world. So she has to deal with those reactions. She's working at a lab called Hastings Lab. She's the only female chemist on staff. Her colleagues are all males. And any female that is there working is in a support staff. She's either a receptionist or a telephone operator or a secretary. And so she has to deal with those reactions. From the men, from the scientists, the reactions that she gets from them, most commonly they range from poo-pooing her ideas, rolling their eyes, laughing at her ideas until she leaves the room and then they take the idea and run with it. Sometimes they tell her just to go get them coffee. Some of them try to take credit for her work, some of them try to steal her work. So she has to overcome all of those obstacles as well as the females, because Elizabeth is so single-minded, she's so focused on her science. She doesn't chit-chat with them in the cafeteria or when she comes in the morning. So they think that she's haughty or aloof, arrogant, so they're not nice to her either. So she has to kind of navigate through her work. Well, she loves what she's doing, but it's not a real pleasant environment. She has a lot of obstacles to overcome. Until she meets Calvin Evans. And Calvin Evans is the brilliant, lonely, Nobel Prize nominated head chemist in the Hastings lab. But even their first meeting doesn't go well, because one day she's been trying to get her boss to order her some more supplies, and he's poo-pooing her ideas. He doesn't think she needs them. And someone just offhand says, Calvin Evans has all kinds of supplies in his lab, and he gets anything he wants. He has all kinds of beakers, and that's what she's after. So she decides she could go in there and borrow some beakers. So she goes in there and she's taking the beakers, and he comes into the room and he thinks she's the secretary. And that ruffles her feathers. And she lets him know right away that she is a scientist on the same standing as he is. But as time goes on, they begin to get to know each other and they fall in love. Not only does he fall in love with her personality and her beauty, but he loves her brilliant mind. And he is her greatest support system. He really truly believes that she's going to come up with a discovery that will change the world of chemistry. So he is constantly encouraging her to continue to be her best individual. He also encourages her to go outside of work, because she's a person who tends to just focus on work all the time. And so he teaches her to row, because one of the reasons he moved to Southern California and works in this smallish lab is because he heard from a pen pal early on that it had great rowing weather. So she does learn to row, and together they row on an 8-person crew. So the book does have quite a bit of information about rowing, which was interesting to me. I found out what a verb is. If you read the book, you'll know too. And that really does help her. And so they're very happy. They're very happy professionally and personally, until something happens, a tragedy happens that changes the trajectory of both of their lives. And I'm going to let you read the book to find out what that is, and we'll go to our next book. And it's like this is our fourth word. That's it. Deal. That he turns up every time.
Entry.
Weirdly. E and a T. Oh, that's a
Teach.
So she has to be. They can know.
Strep.
What's that?
Strep.
Stress.
STREP.
It is a stress, okay. Stress. Ooh, that is deep. They'll have to eat in there somewhere. Say that. Steak. Yeah. Okay.
Goes.
That your store.
Not the R. Not the R.
Ooh. Stove. Stove.
This is the last one.
When you depending on when you solve it on the sixth one, they always put up Okay, so obviously, she has a post, we know that from the opening work. So how does she get from being a chemist to a TV host? Well, the tragedy that changes both of their lives and its repercussions caused her to not be a chemist anymore. And so she is still kind of working in the background as a chemist, because what she's doing is she's at home and she has, she's taken her kitchen and she has redone it as a chemistry lab so she can continue to work on her abiogenesis research. And her male colleagues bring their research to her and have her check it over, especially the ones in the abiogenesis field. And so she charges them by the hour. She's able to make some money that way. But several years go by and she needs more money. She has a daughter who is going into elementary school. And so she's kind of needing to do something different. She's not sure what that's going to be. Well, she's always loved cooking. In fact, she looks at cooking as chemistry. It's change, it's a reaction. You put ingredients together, they change, they react, turn into something different. And so she begins making these really interesting lunches for her daughter, Mad, who's going to elementary school. And Mad comes home from school and she says, well, this little girl in my class keeps eating my meals, my lunches. And Elizabeth is thinking, we don't have the money to pay for 2 kids. So she tries calling the father of the little girl, try to get him to intervene to keep his daughter from eating Mad's lunch. And he never returns her calls. So taking matters into her own hands as she would, she marches into his workplace, which tends to be, it is a TV studio. He's a producer. And she gets in the scene. He has no idea what she's talking about. And this conversation is so funny when you read it in the book. And she's trying to tell him, you need to get your daughter to quit eating my daughter's food. And in the course of this conversation, he's looking at her and he's thinking, she's telling him what she's making for her daughter, because he's like, well, what's my daughter eating? She's telling him what she's making. He's thinking, wow, this woman knows a lot about cooking. She's beautiful. She can communicate really well because she's giving out. She has a presence. I need a new host for cooking for Supper 6, my new cooking show. So he offers her the job. And at first she thinks this is preposterous. You know, she's a chemist, not a chef. But she has always loved to cook. She needs a job. So she, in the end, decided to take the job. But what Howard, the TV producer, doesn't realize is that she's not your typical woman of that time. She is, she's going to have her own ideas. She's very strong-willed. So the first thing she does, she goes in and they have this cute little cheery TV kitchen set up. And she says, nope. She starts taking things out of it because she wants it to be more like a chemistry lab. What her plan is, she's thinking, I can teach these viewers who are housewives, I can teach them chemistry as well as cooking. And so that is her goal. So she doesn't follow the script, she doesn't read the cue cards, she doesn't use the sponsors' products, she does her own thing. And it's wildly popular. The women who watch this love it. And she has a TV audience and then she has an audience at home. And these women are coming to the studio, they're taking notes, they're asking her questions, and it's just extremely popular. But the television producer, her boss and his boss don't like this at all. They want her to go back to doing what she's supposed to be doing, what they envisioned, the little woman with the apron and showing the product and doing the right thing in their eyes. So remember I told you how she doesn't react emotionally? So her boss pulls her in one day after she had shown a sponsored product like she was supposed to. She'd gone off script and done something different. And oh, by the way, this is funny too. She always throws in chemistry and scientific terms. Like she'll say, you're going to throw in a pinch of sodium chloride instead of salt. And you can use the acetic acid in the salad dressing. You also can use this to clean. And she'll go off course and she'll teach her how to clean with vinegar. So anyway, her boss pulls her in and he's furious that she's not done what she's supposed to do. And he's getting a lot of pressure. And he yells, he says, you have to start doing this. You have to start following the script and reading the cue cards and showing the products that are supposed to be shown. And if you don't do that, I'm going to have to fire you. She just looks at him very impassively, takes her pencil out of her hair, jots down a note and says, we need to tell you, I cannot use the cream soda from the sponsors tomorrow. It's just disgusting. And she got up and walked off. And he was just like, see here. How am I going to do? But what she has done with the show is that she has empowered the viewers, the women, to feel that they're smart enough to learn chemistry as well as cooking. And she also validates them. She validates how hard those housewives work during the day. And at the end of every episode, this was one of my favorite parts, she would say, at the end, she would say, children, set the table. Your mother needs a break. And so, because she's so popular, she can stay on the air until her boss's boss decides, I've had it. I'm not going to do this anymore. And he calls her into his office after hours, and he's going to confront her, and she's going to toe the line or else. And I'll let you read the book and see what happens. Okay, let's go to our last word. Okay, good starting word.
Table.
Which was?
Table.
Table. Ooh, you got 3 letters there. Least. No, no 2. Just saying. Let me get a drink when you guys are thinking.
Yeah, good words. Barn.
Learn.
I have one for you. Donna.
Okay, hang on, I just one second. Okay, so we have L-E-A, we just have 2 letters left. Least. What?
No T.
Least? Least? No T. There's no T? Okay. Did you have one, Wayne?
C-U-L-E-T.
C-U-L-E-T? That's not gonna use the E. That's not gonna work. If it were, that'd be a good starting word though. Because we know it starts with L-E-A. Leash. Spoken by a true dog owner. Which I know it is. So leash is correct. Okay. One of my favorite characters in this book is Calvin and Elizabeth's dog, whose name is 630. They had been talking about getting a dog, and they had many moves to do so. And so she walks in the store one day, and as she comes out, there's this mangy, dirty, scraggly dog that's sitting off the side. She doesn't even see him, but he sees her. Something clicks in him, so he follows her home. And as they're nearing their house, Calvin's outside, and he sees him, and he says, "Hey, who's that following you?" Because she's running late, she thinks he's asking her the time, so she says, 6:30. So that's what 6:30 is. But it's such a great thing. He's so smart. And she picks up on this right away. And he is, he's really good at learning words. And so she steps off learning, teaching him words. She has special techniques she uses, and she also reads them. All the scientific journals, cooking books, recipes, and pretty soon, by the end of the book, 630 knows 600 plus words. And she teaches him to help her. Like she has remodeled her kitchen so that it's a lab, and all of her ingredients and stuff are on the bottom. And so she can say, 6:30, I need some baking soda. And he'll run over and get the baking soda and bring it to her. I need the skillet with a long handle. Then we'll get the skillet and bring it to her. And Garmus actually patterned this dog after a dog that she owned named Friday. And Friday was also a rescue dog. And after they had the dog, they were training it, and she thought, wow, he's really picking up, sit, stay, fetch, roll over very fast. And she thought, that's really good. One day she couldn't find her keys, and she yelled at her husband, I can't find my keys. And Brian gets up and heads over to the entry table. He gets up there, he looks around, no keys there. So he goes to the kitchen counter, he gets up there, looks there, no keys, runs into the bedroom, looks on the end table. She's like, he's looking at all the places where I usually leave my keys. So she patterned him after that dog. 630 is also a narrator in the book. He doesn't narrate like a whole chapter at a time, but he'll give his little insight. Like when she's pregnant with Mad, he talks to Mad in her stomach, and he calls it Creature. He tells Creature about what's happening out in the world. And then when she brings Mad home, when she walks in the door, he thinks, Creature, you're a girl. And he's very distraught because over years, this is talking about how English is only one language. He thinks, what? I have to learn more words in more languages. So he's a great character in the book. And Leash also plays a very pivotal part, both the pencil from the front, and then Leash. They both play pivotal parts in the plot throughout the novel. There's also some good supporting cast members besides 6:30. There's a neighbor lady who helps her take care of Mad. That Howard, her producer, becomes a great friend. I don't want you to think that the book is all about misogyny and how she's pushed down, because there's a lot of great supporting characters who help her and help her overcome all the obstacles and challenges that she faces. One reason I love this book is because it made me think of my mom. My mom was born in 1935. She graduated high school in 1952, so she would have been in the range, a little bit older. My mom she could have done anything. She was salutatorian in her high school class. She was a master seamstress, made all of our clothes, almost all through high school. But the gourmet cook was always the president of one organization or another when I was growing up. But because of the time that she lived in, college was never a consideration for her. So she married my dad right out of high school. They had 6 kids in 9 years. And so my mom was a housewife, and she was a really great housewife. But I've always wondered what my mom would be if she'd been born a little bit later. And reading this book really made me think about that. And I thought, I wonder what mom would have done. And maybe she would have chosen the same life. She'd think to be very happy. I don't know. But I bet all of you can think of a woman, and maybe you are that woman that you think, if I'd been born a little later, I would have. And so that was one reason I loved the book too. And then on the same New York Times review that I found with Blurred, I also found this was the closing paragraph. Lessons in chemistry will make you wonder about all the real-life women born ahead of their time. Women who were sidelined, ignored, and worse because they weren't as resourceful, determined, and lucky as Elizabeth thought. She's a reminder of how far we've come, but also how far we have to go. So it is a great book, and I hope that this encourages you to read the book. Even men would enjoy the book. It seems like it would be more, because it is about a woman and a man's time, but it's very enlightening, and it's very funny. It has so many funny parts. Okay, now, I also brought my 5 almost reviewed books to you guys. And then on the back are all the series that I brought. Okay, so the first one is Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ames. And the library has all of these books except the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, but you can get that on your library. So the blurb says, for Our Missing Hearts, Bert Gardner was 12. His mother, a Chinese-American poet, left when he was 9. He only knows that her books are banned. He receives a letter containing a cryptic drawing and is pulled into a quest to find her. His journey takes him to the folk tales she told as a child, to an underground network of heroic librarians, and finally to New York City. This is about the lessons and legacies we pass on to our children and the power of art to create change. So this is a dystopian novel set in the not too distant future in America. It's an America of severe nationalism and such intense hatred of China that all Asian-looking people are considered to be subversive, whether they are Asian American or from another country. And so some people have chosen to leave their families rather than face discrimination. And that's what has happened with Bert's mother. And she is part of a group, and this is one part of the book that I really love. They use art to protest what is happening. And so they have all these art things that pop up. It's really interesting. And then also, Eames, her prose towards the end about what we do for our children, what we give up for our children, and what that means to us. It's so moving. So moving. It brought me to tears. So, okay, the next one is The Lioness by Chris O'Hallion. Tanzania, 1964. When Katie Barstow, A-list actress, and her husband decide to bring Hollywood friends to the Serengeti for their honeymoon, they envision giraffes gently eating leaves from the acacia trees. What they do not expect is a kidnapping gone wrong, and Russian mercenaries herding them into Land Rovers with guns to their heads. As the sun gives way tonight, Katie, Hollywood royalty, prays for a single thing: see the sunrise again. Christopher Halligan is one of my favorite authors. I don't know how many of you guys read his book, but one thing I really appreciate about him, he does not focus on one genre. He writes about a variety of characters in a variety of settings, both place and time. So sometimes he writes historical fiction, sometimes he writes current fiction, sometimes he writes science fiction. So, but what he does with all of his books is he strips his characters and thus the readers down to their basic humanity. And then he shows the good and the bad that all of us have in us. And about this book, I would say, don't be too quick to think, wouldn't do that. Because you can't believe what these people have to do to try to survive this, okay? The third one is, this is the only one, let me show you this. See that? This is my copy, you see the cover over there. 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This novel is like The Game of the Blue with a dash of Downton Abbey and The Wit of Agatha Christie. The rules of Blackie. Evelyn Hardcastle will die at 11 p.m. every day until Aidan Bishop can identify her killer and break the cycle. However, there is a twist. Every time the day begins again, Aidan wakes up in the body of a different guest. And some of his 8 hosts are more helpful than others. The story twists together a mystery of unexpected creativity that leaves listeners guessing until the last second. Okay, so this book, I tried to come up with 5 books that I read in the last year that are different, so everyone has kind of a chance to find at least one book they really want to read. This one is a true mystery. It's told in first person, so you're experiencing things at the same time that Aidan is. And so when he wakes up in the first person's body that's not his body, you're just as confused as he is. There's no omniscient narrator that can give you any clues. You're following Aidan's journey. So if he does go back and forth between characters, so if you are a person that does not like time travel, I do love time travel, but some people don't, or if you don't like books that jump around, this might not be your cup of tea. But if you stick with it, the further you get into the book, you start seeing patterns, and you think, oh, no, this is interesting. We read it for my daughter Callie has a book club, and our book club read it this last month, and we had the widest range of ratings we've ever had. We tend to rate the book from 0 to 10. We had one person that said this is a 0, I hate it. And then we had one person say, I loved it, I'd give it an 8. And only because I was so confused for a while. We had a really spirited discussion about it. So I would encourage you to give it a try. Okay? And then Stephen King, fairy tale, newest one. A 17-year-old boy inherits the keys to a parallel world where good and evil are at war, and the stakes could not be higher for that world or ours. Charlie meets a dog, Radar, and her owner, recluse in a big house with a locked shed. When the man dies, he leaves Charlie at the set, telling him that inside the shed is a portal to another world. This magnificent tale pits good against evil, and a heroic boy and his dog must lead the battle. Yeah, I think I told you guys in an earlier review how much I love Stephen King. And for people that know me, they're just always so surprised by that because I am such a big scary cat. I cannot go to scary movies. I can't watch scary TV shows. The only horror type novels I will read are Stephen King's. I've read every single thing he's ever written. And the reason I do is because his characters are so well drawn. He is a master at writing about characters. I also really like the whole parallel world idea where, you know, there's a portal, you go into another world and you can fight a battle in there. Not that I think that that's real. And Stephen King makes you think that that's his also magic of Stephen King. So this book, it has that, and it also has all those fairy tale elements that you remember from all the kids when you were a kid. It has giants and little people and curses and evil animals and royalty, all those things. And it has a boy and a dog trying to be evil. How can you not like this? It's a great book. Okay, my final fifth book is The Reading List by Sarah Alicia Adams. Widower Mukesh lives a quiet life in West London. Alicia, a bright, anxious teenager, works at the local library and discovers a crumpled list of novels in the back of To Kill a Mockingbird. Intrigued, he decides to read every book. When Mukesh is desperate to forge a connection with his bookworm granddaughter, Alicia gives him the list. The books create a connection as fiction helps him find joy. This is a sweet, sweet, sweet book that will leave you with a smile on your face. I love the intergenerational friendship between Mukesh and Alicia, and Mukesh and his granddaughter. I wish we had more of those in our world. And also, Mukesh is recently widowed, and so his journey is so interesting because he decides, I'm not going to just grow up and die. He misses his wife, but he has to find a way to live his life with joy. And so he tries all kinds of different things. He tries to do things that he always took care of. His journey to find that path to finish out his life is really a good story, too. And then, since this is the third month of the year, I added 3 great series this time. And the first one is the Beartown series by Frederick Bachman, and I put the series on the back. So the 3 books are Beartown, SAHU, and the Winners. Beartown, a tiny community nestled deep in the trees. Down by the lake stands an ice rink, which is why people in Beartown believe tomorrow will be better. Their junior ice hockey team is to compete in the national semi-final, and they actually have a shot at winning. All hopes and dreams rest on the shoulders of the teenage boys. However, before the match, a violent act will leave a young girl traumatized and a town in turmoil. Beartown explores the hopes that bring a community together, the secrets that tear it apart, and the courage it takes for individuals to go against the grain. So the 3 books, they deal with the tragedy or the event that happens. And then it goes on. It still has hockey in every book, but don't let that scare you. It's more about relationships and the people in the community. And there's a rivalry between Beartown and Yed, which is the nearby town. 2 towns deep in the forest in the middle of nowhere. And when I was reading it, it made me think of the stories I heard about how it used to be between Colby and Goodland. I don't think it's that way anymore, but it has that element. And then it's really, the 3 books are all the same characters are all in them, and you see them grow and move and do all these different things. And it shows how in a community, you have to learn to get along with people that are different from you. And not only have to get along with them, but you have to learn to appreciate them and work with them. And I think that's a valuable lesson for our world today. So that's why I chose that one. And the next one is the Stephen King series. Within all of his work, he has a little 3-novel series. They're all similar. They all have the same characters. 3 of the most unlikely heroes King has ever created try to stop a lone killer from killing thousands. In the pre-dawn hours, hundreds of unemployed folks line up for a job fair. Without warning, the driver plows through the crowd in a stolen Mercedes. 8 are killed, 15 are wounded. Months later, a retired cop, Bill Hodges, is still haunted by the unresolved crime. When he gets a crazed letter from Mr. Mercedes, who threatens an even more diabolical attack, Hodges tries to prevent another tragedy. Only Hodges, with a couple of highly unlikely allies, can apprehend the killer before he strikes again. King has described this novel as a hard-boiled detective story more than a horror story. And that is really true. Bill Hodges is this trusty, retired detective who really would just like to sit in his lazy boy and watch TV, but he feels like he has to try to stop Brady Hartsfield, who is Mr. Mercedes. And so the 2 people that help him, Jerome is the boy who goes with his mom, and in the course of the 3 novels, he goes to Harvard. He's very smart. And then Holly Gibney is the other one. She's the sister of one of the victims in the first book. She's on the autism spectrum, so she has trouble interacting with people, but she can see connections that other people can't see. And so the 3 of them take on this evil that is Brady Hartsfield. It is more of a mystery, a crime novel than a horror novel. There's a little bit of supernatural things in the second, 3rd book, but mostly it's just a crime novel. And then finally, the last one. This one has 19 books in it. So if you haven't read the series, oh, you're in for a good time. Okay. The Hill Artist is the first one, the Gabriel Avant series. Gabriel Alon is the protagonist in Silva's espionage series that focuses on Israeli intelligence. Alon's career began in 1972 when he and several others were plucked from civilian life by the office, which is in reality the Mossad, to participate in Operation Wrath of God, an act of vengeance to hunt down and eliminate those responsible for killing Israeli athletes in the Munich Olympics. So I'm sure most of you remember that, the killing of the athletes in the Munich Olympics. Alon, whose cover is an art restorer, paints, speaks 7 languages, and comes from German Holocaust survivors. Silva has an uncanny ability to place Alon and his group in situations that correspond to real life events. So Gabriel Alon is one of the best characters in a series that I can think of. He is a thoughtful, gentle, cultured, intelligent man, and he's also an assassin for the Israeli Secret Service. That's his job. And he sidelines as an art restorer, which he's very, very good at. He's tortured by what he has to do in his job, but he feels such a moral compulsion to try to rid the world of evil. And then he's mostly going after terrorists, things like that, people like that. And then Silva is the author. I don't know how he does it. Sometimes he writes a book and I'll read it, and then like maybe 6 months later, something will happen in the world that is similar to what happened in the book. And you think, how does he know that? How does he see that? Then he also sometimes takes things that really happened. You guys remember when Jamal Khashoggi, he was the Wall Street Journal journalist, he was killed in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul by the Saudis. He took that event and he wrote something similar and wove it into his next book. So if you like political thrillers, espionage, you'll love these books. They're so good. I wait every year, usually write one a year, right? And at the library, knocking on the door. And then when it's coming out, how much I love it. So, okay, there guys, you have lots of reading materials. Hopefully you can find enough to read in there to keep reading until next March. Thank you so much for coming. Did anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Oh, my goodness. That's so perfect. That's oh, yeah. Don't forget about anything. Thank you very much.